Today's video is probably going to be one of the most important ones that I'll be releasing in a pretty long time. We can of course talk all about the new Dark Zone, how it works, what the mechanics are. We can talk about the skills and the weapons, and we can talk about everything that is new. But at the end of the day, for most people, the only thing that will matter is how the game feels and if it is any fun to play. And that's always a difficult thing to judge for anyone going to an event like this. Because, of course, it is a lot of fun to go to a big game studio where you are then treated like a king and you get to play an unreleased game that no one else is playing and that you happen to be a big fan of. Of course, something like that is going to be fun. And it's very difficult not to get caught up in the initial burst of hype surrounding such an event like this and seeing everything for the very first time. That's why I actually waited for quite a while after my whole event was over before I started working on this video. Luckily for you guys, you didn't really get to experience the effect of that because the embargo date was still set a whole month after the capture event anyway, so I had a lot of time to think about what I was going to say. But for your information, I actually did not finish this video until about a week ago, after which I had enough time to think about everything that I was going to say, after I've had a chance to look back at all the footage multiple times to see if things really were exactly as I remembered them to be while playing the game. And now, after all of that, I actually do believe that I have a fairly definitive opinion on most of the things that were shown during my capture events, what I like about the game, and also what I do not like as much. And that's really what this video is going to be about. So, let's start off by talking about something that actually quite impressed me, which is the gunplay. We'll start this video off with the gunplay. Simply put, it feels really good to shoot a weapon in The Division 2. It is quite difficult to put my finger on what it is exactly. It must be the audio or the visual feedback that you get on the screen, maybe the kick that the weapons have per shot, or maybe it is because the NPCs and the other players, they die a lot faster than that they did in The Division 1. If you shoot your weapon, you feel powerful, and bullets hurt enemies. And I guess that's always good to have in a game that's, at least for a big part, a shooter. You know, in The Division 1, enemies were really tanky a lot of the times, even players. But in The Division 2, everybody feels a lot more squishy. Time to kill has been reduced by a whole lot. There are still some tanky boss-like NPCs who have full body armor that you have to destroy first before you're actually able to kill them. But in these cases, it makes sense for them to be tanky. They don't actually take 100 bullets to the head either, and all the other NPCs around them, they actually die a lot faster when you hit your bullets. And again, the same goes for enemy players in PvP. The time to kill is fast, and if you get caught out in the open, you will get dropped very fast, and it will most likely result in a death as well. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself though, because if I remember things right, the time to kill in the Division 1's beta and whatnot, also, it was a lot different than that it was at the end game. Players were also pretty squishy, they died pretty fast as well, but then, you know, fast forward to when the Division 1 released and we actually got to play with the end game gear. Things changed a lot, but I gotta say, when I was over at Massive Studios, I of course did also play 1 hour of level 30 PvP, where we probably didn't have perfect endgame builds, but we were decked out in purple and yellow gear, so we at least had some stuff, and the time to kill and the whole experience, it felt about the same, to be honest. I think that the normalization that takes place in the Dark Zone actually automatically turns all the gear that you have into level 30 gear. This is why you suddenly have a lot more armor bars above your health bar when stepping into the DZ as a level 7 or a level 10 player. So, you know, it sort of makes sense that they feel the same. There are still DZ brackets for players with different levels, because of course new players will most likely only have green gear and no skills or signature weapons unlocked, so of course if those players had to fight straight up versus players at the end game, then the players at the end game would still be at a very significant advantage, because of course your stats get boosted to level 30, but green weapons and green gear does have fewer stats to begin with, so you're just not going to be as strong. And I think that this is a good thing, because it means that the Dark Zone is pretty consistent throughout the leveling experience, and it isn't bound as much to player level. So yeah, gunplay, I'm really happy with it. Even hipfire feels good. It kind of sucks to do. It's not strong because the spread is pretty huge, and you have no reticle whatsoever, and also by the time you get close enough to somebody to actually get in hipfire range, you're most likely gonna be dead because the time to kill is a lot shorter. But even when you're hipfiring, it feels good and it doesn't feel awkward like in the first game where the camera goes to a really janky place. So yeah, the guns, they feel great. But just because the guns feel good to shoot and they also look good, that doesn't mean that the gunplay itself is perfect automatically. And I actually have two big critiques of the gunplay within the game. The first one has to do with the first-person scoping that you can do with certain scopes. And the second one is about the fact that sniper and shotgun bullets now stagger players upon impact. Yeah, that's actually a thing now. But yeah, let's start off with first-person scoping. Now, snipers that you equip, or rifles with a high zoom scope, they actually go straight into the first-person zoom when you aim down sights. So when I press left trigger on the controller, it actually goes straight into first person, and there's no way to go into third person. Then, if you zoom in again, because you can still press the zoom in button, the scope zooms in like 10 times or something around that, which is, in my opinion, far too aggressive for a game like this, and it really doesn't work in most combat scenarios. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of the really big zoom, but I'm also not a fan of the first-person zooming to begin with, because first-person scoping in The Division has always been very inconsistent. In The Division 2, I couldn't find a separate slider for the scoped-in sensitivity. I can't show you this because I wasn't allowed to record the menus, but I can just tell you it wasn't there. So then we very rapidly go back to the old Deadeye problem where scoping into first person makes the sensitivity be very slow and it makes it hard to track targets. But then if you have no scope and you zoom in with third person, then suddenly the sensitivity is a lot faster and it's really hard to get used to it. But even if the developers would add a separate slider for the scoped-in sensitivity, the scoped-in sensitivity, it has always been a little weird in The Division, and it doesn't seem like that is something that has been solved with The Division 2. Now, let me try to explain what I mean by this, because I can put a 12x scope on both my assault rifle and my sniper. And then when I use those to zoom in to first person, the two scopes will give me the exact same zoom, right? Because it's the same scope. But when I look from the left to the right, or from the right to the left on my sniper, and I do the same thing on my assault rifle, you will see that the sniper actually moves much slower compared to the assault rifle. I think this has something to do with that different weapon classes, they have different sensitivity settings by default, and maybe the scoped-in sensitivity is just a multiplier on top of that. I'm not sure what's going on behind the curtains technically, but I do know that sensitivity is different per weapon class, and this becomes very obvious when using the first-person scoping. And this makes getting used to all of that and trying to improve your aim very inconsistent, because you can have the same scope on two different weapons, but then the sensitivity is completely different depending on what weapon you use, and that's really not acceptable in my opinion. On top of that, when you zoom into first person, you also can't really see the reticle either, and I think this is a little more important on the sniper than on any of the other weapons. But when you zoom in with your sniper, it always starts off with this huge bloom. There's a big ass crosshair. And you can't see that when going straight into first person, so it's really hard to actually tell when you'll be able to land your bullets consistently. Blurring the first person crosshair when it is not yet accurate, like for example in CSGO, would go a long way to fix that problem, but as it stands, there are just too many clunky issues with the first person scoping for it to be something valuable in my opinion. So that's all of those things are enough reason for me to just avoid snipers and first person aiming in this game altogether. Oh, and on a side note, head glitching is also still possible with the first-person scopes. And what I mean by that is using the first-person sight at a certain angle around corners to shoot players from a position where they can't see you back. The example that I used here in the Division 1 is sort of an extreme example, a sort of perfect picture scenario that you probably won't see in day-to-day gameplay, but this is still possible in the Division 2 to the same extent, which is something that I just wanted to note down for everybody watching this video. Could be that it's gonna get fixed in the final release though, just wanted to let everybody know. So that is first-person scoping for you, the first issue that I have with the Gunplay. The second one is the stagger in PvP. Now, while playing PvP, I noticed that I got staggered a lot. And at first, I didn't really know why. I was like, hey, that I get hit by a grenade that I just didn't see. I was playing on console, and I wasn't too good at the game, so I just figured that I was missing a whole lot of stuff of what was actually going on. But looking back at the footage, I realized that I actually got staggered every time I got hit by a shotgun or a sniper. And I actually double-checked with the developers. This is a thing in PvP now. You get hit by a shotgun pellet or a sniper or a rifle bullet, you get staggered. And well, this was a surprise to me. I really, really don't like this at all. It makes the shotguns extremely frustrating to play against, especially when multiple players are using it against you. You basically almost get stun locked. I think there is an internal cooldown on it though, so you just can't get staggered over and over and over again. But with the short time to kill, getting staggered just once will be enough to kill you. I mean, even in the Division 1 with the very lengthy time to kill, getting hit by a frag grenade and getting staggered, that's even, in that game, it's even enough to, most of the time, just die. So adding that same type of stagger animation to a shotgun pellet or a sniper bullet, even to the body, is... I have no idea why on earth they would add that to the PvP. I don't know what they were thinking here. I don't think that this is good at all. So yeah, that's basically the gameplay and the gunplay summed up for you. So now I want to talk about the movement. And this is something that I also wasn't too big of a fan of. I felt that the movement was very clunky and loose and definitely not as crisp and tight as it was in the Division 1. Now this is, of course, this could have many reasons. First up, again, I played on Xbox, I'm not used to a controller, and I'm not used to the Division 2 movement yet in the first place. It could also be because the game that I played is still an early alpha build. But it is what I played, so I can only judge on what I played so far. And so far, I don't really like the movement. I've seen a lot of comments about the character's running animation being a bit off. I've seen a lot of comments like that on my YouTube channel. But to be honest, it isn't something that has personally bothered me. The animation looks fine, in my opinion. There's nothing wrong with it. But it's more about the feel of the character. When I was playing it, it felt just as sloppy and loose as well. It was also hard to explain, but there was also some sort of guiding system in place. I haven't really ever seen this in a video game, but basically I was trying to move my character to a corner of an object at a certain angle, and then the game would automatically try to steer my character around it, just to run to the side. It's really hard to show off when this happens, because when I look back at the footage, I don't know if I moved the stick myself or if the game did it for me, but I felt that this sort of thing happened quite a lot during the gameplay, and it was really distracting to me. Now, someone else might see this and think, wow, that's great, I get stuck on objects all the time. In the Division 1, I would really like a system like this. So I can see both sides of the coin here, but I would really like to be in full control of my character's movement and not have some AI or some system move the character for me a little bit wherever it sees fit. So, you know, this is something that I would really like to see disabled. But even besides that, the running and the movement, it still felt very floaty. I think someone else that I talked to put it best. Division 1 movement was crisp and tight. Ghost Recon Wildlands was floaty and clunky. And the Division 2 is somewhere in the middle, but more in the direction of Ghost Recon Wildlands. And I think it doesn't look like that visually, but when you play it and when you feel the game, I 100% agree with that statement. So that's pretty much all I have to say about the movement. What's next is I want to talk a little bit about the skills, because just like the guns, the skills, they look good. They sound very good. I mean, seriously, using the pulse, it leaves a red glow around your character, and the deployable skills like the drone, they follow you all the way around the map. The animations on them, they're top notch. There's no question about it. I don't think there's anything I could say about that that's, you know, negative. But when using some of these skills, they felt a little bit off, I gotta say. Sure, the pulse, it was useful. It was crisp, it worked well, it was almost instant. It's how you would expect the pulse to work. And I can see the shield getting some good value in a game like this where the time to kill is so low. You could use it to push up and really flush out those players, if at least it has enough health. The drone, it was very strong. It was actually overwhelming to go up against, but I can also see that getting a lot of value. I love the defensive drone as well. There are a lot of skills that I really liked, but there are also a lot of skills that I can't really see myself use. For example, the Airburst Seeker Mine and the Mordor turrets, the skills that have those manual reactivation buttons on it, those with the area of effect explosions that I talked about in yesterday's video. Sure, okay, these skills, they allow you to manually select where you want the explosion to happen. But I felt that, you know, in the time that it took the Seeker Mine to roll over and explode in the area that I had selected, I could have already shot down the targets myself with my weapon. I think it is the same problem that you often have in shooter games that give you AI teammates that you can assign to certain enemies. I don't really have an example. Maybe Halo 5, the Halo 5 campaign, you had, I don't know, some allies that you could assign to kill specific enemies. But I always feel like with these sort of things that if you have to move the reticle over to the enemy to assign those skills to do the work, you might as well pull the trigger yourself. And with the faster time to kill this game has, most of the time simply shooting your weapon is a lot faster too, even if you don't have a very optimized build for weapon damage. Bullets travel faster than Seeker Mines, and Seeker Mines are also not instant. So it's very possible that by the time the Seeker Mine gets there, the enemy has already moved away. Of course, on screen I'm showing here an over-exaggerated example, but I hope that you see what I'm talking about here. It is of course possible that at the end game, these offensive skills are a little more relevant because maybe you can build a little better around them. Maybe the blast radius is a lot bigger, the travel time of the Seeker Mine is a lot faster, or maybe the air burst area, you know, the fire effect, it stays a lot longer on the floor, or maybe there's just something about these skills that I haven't quite figured out yet because I didn't have a lot of time with them. But as of now, I feel that these skills are a little bit unnecessary, which is a shame because I can see that the developers wanted to do something special with them. They wanted them to be less click and forget, give some more control to the player. So I do like the direction that they took, although I don't think it is a success 100% just yet, unless you can somehow buff these skills to be a lot stronger. But I also don't think that that's possible, but that's something that I talked about yesterday as well, where I quickly went over the rework to skill power. I don't think we can talk about how this game feels though without talking about the visuals and especially the environment as well. I said that when I was talking about guns, movement, and even the skills, that how things look also have a big impact on how they feel, at least. That's what I believe. That's maybe why the guns felt so good to me. I have really good feedback visually and, you know, audio cues as well. While the movement, it felt quite off, but that could also be because visually it doesn't look that pleasing yet. It's still a little bit clunky. So visuals are really important to me, and I therefore think that talking about how the environment looks is also really important. Now, I'll just come out and say that this is probably one of the best looking games I have ever seen, just like The Division 1, even in the early stages that I played it, even on the Xbox One X. The graphics, the environment, the art direction, it all, in my opinion, it's always been one of the stronger points about The Division, and I really see history repeating itself here again. And I'm not just talking about the sheer amount of polygons per square meter that they managed to squeeze into this world while keeping it playable, but also, again, as I said with the skills, the little effects, the things that maybe don't take a lot of processing power, but that do take a lot of time to animate, a lot of time to code in. You can see these little things everywhere when shooting at objects, when using your skills. It screams polish when I talk about the environment, and that's even in its early stages. Of course, there are some visual bugs, there are going to be some things that don't look quite as they should yet, but it's also the alpha, and these are usually the things that get fixed very last, just before the game launches. So, too long didn't read version of the visuals is that I got nothing bad to say about them, and I'm very happy with how the game looks. I do have some quality of life improvements that I'd still like to see. In the build that I played, caches take a long time to open again, and deconstructing items also feels a little bit slower than it does in the Division 1. I cannot show you this because, again, I cannot show you the menus, but you're just gonna have to take my word for it that these things take a little bit longer than that they should, but that's stuff that could easily be fixed in the beta as well. So I don't think I'm gonna talk about quality of life too much in this video. So I actually think I'm gonna wrap it up right here. I think visuals, gunplay, skills, and movement those are kind of the core things about the game. Of course, we could talk about the Dark Zone as well, but we already did, so I'm gonna skip over that. This is pretty much all I have to say on the game. Does it sound like I have a lot of complaints? I don't really know. Don't get me wrong, the game was fun. I can see myself playing this for sure, and that actually says a lot if you keep in mind that about 90% of the games that I try out, I just quit after a couple hours into them because either they have bad controls, weird performance issues, or even just design decisions that I can't wrap my head around. So trust me when I say that The Division 2 is shaping up to be a very competent product. It just has these little things, like for example the removal of VoIP, the turrets in the DZ, the shock ammo, the stagger when you shoot somebody with a shotgun or a sniper. There's these little things that really hurt the experience quite a lot that could also still easily be polished up. And that's why I think this video was very important. This is, I guess, my initial impressions, my feedback on the game. The game is good, but there's also still a lot to be done. And that's how I'm going to end this video. I think that's a pretty good quote. I'll have a new video coming up tomorrow. It's a little bit shorter this time around. It's about the new medkit or the armor kit system. So I guess until then, I will see you guys later. Or like they say in the Netherlands, zie je later.